A Boeing 747 slams into the English countryside.
Hello!
It was like a battlefield.
Complete and utter devastation.
Where was this 747?
Investigators have all the clues they need to figure out what caused the accident.
The aircraft took off with the same defect that it had arrived with.
But they can't explain why no one on board did anything to prevent it.
They seem to be ignoring the alarms completely.
The first officer was about to die, and he didn't say anything. How can this happen?
The answer lies not at the crash site, but thousands of kilometers away, buried in hundreds of years of history.
Mayday, Mayday.
Gary Dan is enjoying the Christmas holiday at his home just north of London.
I told you I don't like them.
It was a Christmassy family get-together. It was just exchanging of presents. And that's when I heard the noise of the plane coming over. It got louder and louder. It was almost like the plane was going to take the chimneys off. It felt and heard the noise that close to the house.
Living less than 2 kilometers from Stansted Airport, Dan is used to hearing jets, but not this close.
I looked out the window, saw the plane coming over with fire coming out of the engines. As it came over, it sort of banked heavily left, and then just kept banking and banking.
A Korean Air 747 slams into a forest in the village of Great Hallingbury.
This was just a huge, huge explosion that you're watching it happen with a plume of fire coming towards you. I collected a torch. We ran downstairs saying, the plane's gone down, we've got to go and help. My brother and I ran outside and ran towards where it happened. We were racing towards where we could see the plume of smoke and fire, because there's still lots of aviation fuel popping around the area. We ran and jumped into a very large crater, just shouting out,
Hello!
you know, any survivors, please shout.
Hello! Can anybody hear me?
The aircraft had created a 30-foot plus crater. Wreckage was spread over at least half a mile. It was like a battlefield.
We dialed 999.
A plane's gone down in Hatfield Forest in Great Hallingbury.
It takes nearly half an hour for rescue workers to arrive. They quickly determine that there are no survivors. A multi-million-dollar plane and thousands of kilograms of cargo are completely destroyed. It's up to the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch to figure out why.
This is a very sophisticated aircraft, flown by a trained crew, and somehow they had lost control of this aircraft. How can this happen?
Stansted Airport, on London's northeastern edge. The airport is a major European hub for low-cost passenger carriers and cargo flights from around the world.
It really was buzzing. Lots of people there queuing up, checking in, people arriving, lots of meeters and greeters, lots of coaches. So it really was a fairly busy hub just on that run up to Christmas.
Flight 8509 is a Korean Air cargo plane.
The aircraft was a Boeing 747 freighter. As the name suggests, it was not configured with passenger seats, but the interior was full up with freight.
Departing from Seoul, South Korea, the jumbo jet stopped in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, before arriving at Stansted. It will now continue on to Milan, Italy, with a new captain and crew. In the hold, a load controller directs the offloading and onloading of cargo. He makes sure that the more than 63,000 kilograms of freight is stowed safely and securely. More than just stacking boxes, the job can have a critical effect on the flight characteristics of the plane itself.
Loading the aircraft has to be done in a manner that keeps the weight distribution within limits, so that you can't put all the heavy stuff in the back and all the light stuff in the front, for example, because it would tend to tip up and make control difficult, and that would be very dangerous.
Captain Park Duk-kyu is a highly respected commander.
Sir.
And a former colonel in the Korean Air Force, with thousands of hours of flying time on the 747. Park Hun-kyu is Flight 8509's flight engineer, responsible for monitoring the aircraft's mechanical systems. First Officer Yoon Ki-sik is new to the 747, with 195 hours flying time on the aircraft.
On this night, there were the 3 crew and a Korean engineer.
The engineer has overseen some minor maintenance work on the aircraft and will now accompany Flight 8509 back to Seoul.
All right, gentlemen, if departure goes smoothly, we may just make our scheduled time. Let's proceed. Stansted clearance delivery, Korean Air 8509 requesting clearance to Milan.
Korean Air 8509, we have no flight plan. Cannot clear you.
Copy that. Stansted, stand by for flight plan.
Every commercial airplane needs to file a flight plan before it can leave the ground.
Contact our people and get them to refile the flight plan. Hurry up.
Ground control.
Korean Air 8509 must wait while the document detailing their planned route is filed.
As far as the air traffic control system is concerned, it's just another aeroplane. It has to obey all the same operational rules and procedures as any other aircraft, passenger or freight.
Korean Air 8509 cleared to Milan via Dover. Romeo?
Korean Air 8509 cleared the Dover 6 Romeo, squawk 2230.
Now nearly an hour behind schedule, the crew gets clearance to taxi. It's 6:25 p.m.
Korean Air 8509, line up on runway 23.
Position and hold, runway 23. Korean Air 8509.
Captain Park is well aware they have no hope of arriving in Milan on time.
Korean 8509, clear takeoff, runway 23.
Finally.
$80 knots.
Roger.
V1. Rotate.
The plane takes off from Stansted Airport at 6:36 p.m.
Positive rate confirmed.
Gear up.
Gear up. Passing 900 feet.
The aircraft had taken off and climbed to about 2,500 feet.
Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft was making a turn.
Left turn at 1.5 DME.
Copy that. Left turn at 1.5 DME.
The aircraft started its turn to the left.
Heading standby, sir. Heading 158.
The captain's artificial horizon tells him that the plane isn't turning.
Bank's not working.
Bank! Bank! Look! Bank!
For some reason, Flight 8509 has gone from takeoff to total destruction in less than 60 seconds. Korean Air Flight 8509 lies in pieces just a few kilometers from one of the busiest airports in the world.
We had no wreckage, really, that was above knee height. Where was this 747?
After any major crash, Britain's Air Accidents Investigation Branch deploys a safety specialist to the site.
I'd like to take a look around if I could.
Sid Hawkins' job is to assess the level of danger at the crash site.
One of the key things to do is to get investigators into site to start work. And for somebody like me who's looking after their safety, there's always a challenge for me to try and hold them at bay until we've done our initial site assessment.
His first concern, the 30 tons of fuel the 747 was carrying on takeoff.
Is that fuel still on site? If it is, that poses quite an immediate hazard for the team there. In addition to that, what sort of cargo are we dealing with? Are we dealing with just general cargo, or are we dealing with dangerous goods?
Let's shut down the scene for the night. It's too dark and dangerous. Notify your people.
There was no lighting, and it actually was very, very dangerous for the investigators and the rescue services.
Investigation of the crash site will have to wait till morning. But before they leave the area, they make a key find. One of the plane's 2 black boxes.
This was crucial, the discovery of the recorders on the day.
The cockpit voice recorder is extremely important dealing with any accident where we have no crew that have survived. It tells us what they were saying, it gives us an idea of the environment in the cockpit, and it records the sounds from the cautions and warnings that go off in the cockpit.
But this black box has suffered extreme damage. It's too soon to say whether the CVR holds valuable clues that could help explain the sudden crash, or if the last recorded moments of Flight 8509 are gone for good.
Bank!
Meanwhile, the AAIB has begun work closer to the Stansted terminal on the airport runway. The team's operations investigator is David Miller.
We had been out on the runway, having received a report from the airport that the runway was covered in debris.
With Miller at the airport is engineering investigator Steve Moss.
The things that go through your mind are possibly what's known as an uncontained engine failure, which means that the engine has burst and left bits on the runway.
Investigators wonder if the plane actually began to disintegrate on takeoff. Among the small pieces of wreckage on the runway is an especially chilling piece of evidence.
Something that looked very much like a human jawbone.
And of course, then your mind starts to race, what on earth's gone wrong? You know, has somebody been hit by the aircraft as it took off?
We wondered whether somebody had committed suicide, had run towards the aircraft and thrown themselves into the engine, affected its performance, and that had brought it down. We really didn't know.
The runway investigation has stopped all flights in and out of Stansted Airport. The shutdown comes just days before Christmas.
The terminal was seething with people. The pressure on us was tremendous to get that runway open.
Korean airline representatives arrived at Stansted Airport this morning. They're here to talk to accident investigators, both to try to assess what's known about the crash as well as to answer questions.
And there are sure to be a lot of questions. The destruction of Flight 8509 is the 5th major accident for Korean Air in the past 2.5 years. If the AAIB can figure out what happened near Stansted, they may be able to break this deadly pattern.
Daylight and the remains of a 747 lying in a path of destruction on the edge of an English village.
was a very confusing debris field. It takes a while for one to absorb the scene and to try and make sense of it all.
By daylight, they get their first good look at the point of impact. A massive crater surrounded on all sides by scattered debris.
In fact, what we were seeing on the runway was debris from the explosion, which had blown debris high into the air and had been carried downwind and just happened to deposit on the runway.
The far-flung wreckage also helped solve the mystery of what seemed to be a jawbone on the runway.
Closer examination the following morning revealed that it actually was a bit of twisted plastic.
Safety specialist Sid Hawkins now turns his attention to the shattered remnants of the plane's cargo.
If you can imagine 40, 50 tons of cargo, almost all of it packed in cardboard boxes, and the explosion being so severe that every piece had been destroyed, and it gives you an indication really of just how severe this explosion was.
He needs to know if any of it poses a risk to investigators.
We had a consignment of corrosive materials.
Hawkins learns that Flight 8509 also carried military detonating cord, 2 tons of whiskey, color printer cartridges, even an X-ray machine. But he soon establishes that none of it poses a serious threat.
We're able to determine that the dangerous goods from this aircraft had all been destroyed.
But there is one more significant risk Hawkins must assess, one that stems from the design of the plane itself.
We know that this aircraft carries depleted uranium in its tail section, both in the rudder and in the elevators.
The 747-200 series uses depleted uranium as ballast to improve stability in flight. But tests show that none of the radioactive material has escaped.
You feel then that it's safe enough for the guys to start work.
Meanwhile, investigators are still trying to learn if the aircraft broke up before crashing.
I did see a glow, which could have been the plane alight.
I noticed the engines were on fire before it hit.
I explained to the investigators that when I looked out the window, I saw the plane coming over, and then I saw flames coming out of an engine.
Dan's observation raises the possibility that the left side engines flamed out, causing the plane to roll to one side.
It's safe. But be careful down in through there.
To determine if the plane hit the ground intact, they carry out what they call the four corners search.
Have we got both wings? Have we got the tailplane? Have we got the fin and rudder? And the answer eventually was yes, we have, and we were satisfied that there had not been a structural failure of the aircraft in the air.
While locating the four corners, investigators also discover some very distinctive marks on the ground.
It was a long, slender gash, which was made by the wing, and then you could see where the nose had impacted further on. From the shape of the ground marks, you try and understand what attitude the aircraft was in when it hit the ground.
The ground scar gives investigators a revealing glimpse into the flight's final seconds.
The aircraft struck the ground at high speed, steep left bank, steep nose down, and it's an almighty amount of energy.
Of course, it could be that somehow or other the pilot's been misled by his instruments and has become what we call disorientated.
The team brings some of the aircraft's instruments back to the AAIB labs for examination.
We found a few pieces of the ADIs.
The ADI, or Attitude Director Indicator, is a flight instrument that displays the plane's bank and pitch.
when you're flying at night in cloud, there are no visual cues. So he has an artificial horizon or an attitude direction indicator in front of him.
Modern aircraft have 3 instruments, one in front of each pilot and a standby one in the center panel. So if one of them should fail, the pilots can compare their instruments with the standby instrument and see which 2 agree and which one disagrees.
We found only fragments, and we were able to forensically examine these.
They discover that the captain's artificial horizon seems to have malfunctioned. It was showing the plane flying level at the point of impact. That contradicts evidence found at the crash site. But without the plane's flight data recorder, investigators can't explain the discrepancy.
What we needed was that recorder to give us the confirmation of the exact flight path of the aircraft.
Pre-flight maintenance records would normally shed some light on the situation, but not in this case.
Technical log from this flight was not available to us. It had been destroyed in the impact, and unfortunately, a copy was not left at Stansted. It should have been.
For more information, investigators interview the crew that flew the plane to Stansted on the previous leg of the flight.
I need you to walk me through exactly what happened.
They told us that when they departed from Tashkent the day before, in good weather, in daylight conditions, they had to carry out a turn to the left. As the captain commenced the turn, his artificial horizon did not work in roll.
In the daylight, the pilot was able to get his bearings from the horizon outside.
In order to resolve this issue, the captain selected number 3 as his source, and his instrument worked perfectly. They continued the flight and landed uneventfully at Stansted.
After landing, the inbound crew left the terminal before the replacement crew arrived.
The normal practice is if a inbound crew were to meet the outbound crew, there would be a verbal handover, a debrief, if you like, of the state of the aircraft.
But that didn't happen. Instead, the only person that heard about the ADI problem is the Korean Air maintenance engineer.
Okay, I'll have a look.
Korean Airlines had dispatched an engineer to take charge of any work that needed to be done on it.
The Korean engineer didn't have the tools he needed for the job, so he enlisted some local help.
I need you to remove the captain's ADI.
The story of the repair only deepens the mystery. The inbound crew knew they had a faulty instrument and they had it fixed. And yet on takeoff, Captain Park's artificial horizon did not work according to the evidence found at the crash site. The Korean engineer is dead. The only person they can ask about the repair is the British mechanic who helped him.
The locally based engineer told us he removed the instrument from the panel, unplugged the wires at the back.
All right, that's our problem. Can you reset the pin?
And found what he believed to be a problem with the connector pins at the back of the instrument. He replaced the connector in the right way, put the instrument back into the instrument panel, and then carried out a test.
Looks good.
As far as the engineer was concerned, the problem was solved.
Had the maintenance actions actually fixed the defect?
They hope the answer will be found on the flight data recorder. It has finally been recovered at the crash site.
To find that in amongst all the wreckage at the bottom of a 30-foot crater took a considerable effort. It took 7 days to find it.
But when they download the data, something doesn't add up. The readout is showing that the plane's roll angle never exceeded 2 degrees.
Clearly it had gone in to a much steeper roll angle than that, like 90 degrees. So that set the alarm bells ringing. Why should that occur?
Why a Korean Air 747 crashed just moments after takeoff from London's Stansted Airport is a mystery investigators are only beginning to unravel. The flight data recorder from Korean Air 8509 reveals that the faulty ADI reported by the previous crew seems not to have been fixed after all. They need to understand how the fault in the plane's navigation system was for some reason misdiagnosed.
How exactly did your crew report this problem?
Upon landing, the inbound crew's flight engineer noted the problem with the ADI by entering a code in his technical log. He then mentioned it to the maintenance engineer.
Okay, I'll have a look.
The normal action is to take the code that's entered and then look in the corresponding fault isolation manual, which has the same corresponding numbers, and that would then tell him what the fault was and what he had to do about it to fix it.
But the Korean Air engineer didn't have a copy of the fault isolation manual. Without it, he couldn't correctly identify the proper repair. Instead, he tried to troubleshoot the problem as best he could.
All right, that's our problem.
This is when we go into the detailed evaluation of the aircraft manual, the component manuals, right down to the wiring manuals.
After an in-depth analysis of the plane's navigation system, they finally figure out what was wrong with the captain's artificial horizon. It was being fed corrupt information. The real problem lay deeper, with a device called an inertial navigation unit, or INU. Units deep inside the airplane send pitch and roll data to the captain and first officer's ADIs. Investigators conclude that one of the INUs short-circuited.
It simply ended up in corrupting the roll information that was fed to both the flight data recorder and the captain's ADI.
All the maintenance work done on Flight 8509 was misdirected. What they had repaired was never the problem at all.
Really, they were barking up the wrong tree.
I need you to remove the captain's ADI.
If the fault isolation manual had been available, they might have deduced that the correct maintenance action was to replace the number 1 INU, not the captain's ADI.
The rectification action was completely ineffective. The aircraft took off with the same defect that it had arrived with.
An instrument failure is a rare occurrence. However, crews are trained to deal with it.
Checking each of the 3 ADIs should have allowed the captain to identify the problem. The recorded flight data shows that both the first officer's ADI and the backup instrument displayed the plane's correct bank angle. Only the captain's artificial horizon was wrong. How the crew dealt with that defect in the seconds after takeoff could be the key to understanding why the flight ended in disaster. Investigators finally have new insight into those crucial last moments.
Sir.
AAIB technicians have salvaged the recording from the badly damaged CVR.
대답해. 얼마나 연결될 것인지 그들이 묻고 있어. 네가 말하기 전에 그들이 무엇을 말하고 있었는지 확실해.
One of the most important things that was on that recorder was the sound of a warning horn going off in the cockpit as the aircraft departed from Stansted.
But even more significant than the sound of the alarm is what is not on the tape.
They seem to be ignoring the alarms completely.
There was no discussion about the fault with the artificial horizon.
The alarm is telling the pilots one of their ADIs is malfunctioning. They should check the third instrument to see which ADI is correct. But the pilots remain strangely silent.
The flight engineer saw the standby horizon, looked at the other instruments, and actually pointed out this problem to the captain.
Bank's not working.
But the captain did not respond to that, either in words or deeds.
Investigators are also troubled by the fact that the first officer, who had a working ADI, did nothing to save the plane.
Why didn't the first officer say anything? Here, he was in a situation where he was about to die. He knew that the instruments were at fault. The comparator buzzer was going off, and he said nothing.
Bank! Bank!
The co-pilot should have said to the captain, your ADI is not reading correctly.
He should have forcefully said to the captain, mine's correct. I have control. Let me take control.
The correct response to that would have been, yes, you have control.
But the co-pilot said nothing.
The CVR also answers a lingering question concerning some of the eyewitness accounts of the crash.
The CVR gave no indication that there was a fire on board the aircraft. You would have heard of an engine fire bell, which is a very distinctive warning, and we didn't hear that.
The fact that some witnesses were wrong doesn't surprise Moss.
There's all sorts of things people can see in bad weather conditions at night. Reflections of the aircraft's lights or the navigation lights sometimes can mislead people into thinking there's a fire there.
Investigators now want to know more about the crew members who let a minor malfunction lead to a catastrophic crash.
We listened to the words on the tape, but of course they were in Korean. We had the translation in front of us, but it was very difficult to determine the tone of what was said and how it was said. And we had someone who spoke Korean listening to this conversation, telling us the social interaction between the two crew.
대답해. 얼마나 연결될 것인지 그들이 묻고 있어. 네가 말하기 전에 그들이 무엇을 말하고 있는지 확실해.
They can hear that prior to takeoff, the captain was becoming more and more agitated by the delays.
Korean Air 8509, please explain your delay.
Answer them. They're asking how long the delay will be. Make sure you understand what they're saying before you speak.
Stansted clearance, standing by for new flight plan for Milan.
The captain was very overbearing. He was very critical of the first officer.
And the first officer was quite subservient in this conversation. He did all the listening, the captain did all the talking.
So you'd say he's being condescending?
Miller can't help but wonder what would have happened if the captain had listened to the engineer's warning. He wants to know if there was enough time to save the plane. Using a flight simulator and data from the flight recorder, they recreate the entire flight. The simulation reveals that impact with the ground was not inevitable.
It was possible, just possible, to recover the aircraft about 500 feet above the ground, doing about 260 knots at 80 degrees a bank. If you knew what was happening, you could have just recovered the aircraft, just skimming the ground in doing so.
The results convince Miller and his team that they need to better understand how Korean Air trains its flight crews.
It was obvious from this accident that the crew interaction played a big part in this accident, so we needed to go to Korea to see how the crew were trained.
In Korea, Miller gets an opportunity to observe Korean Air flight training firsthand.
There was definitely a hierarchy between pilots. The captain was supposedly the older, the wiser, the more experienced, and the first officer was the younger, inexperienced apprentice. Crews were working in a very procedural way. There was not really much free thinking to deal with an unusual situation.
The crew dynamic observed in the Korean training session is strikingly similar to what was recorded in the cockpit of Flight 8509. Investigators dig into Captain Park's personal history.
A lot of the captains in Korean Air were people that had developed their skills in the military.
Captain Park had been a colonel, a pilot with a distinguished career flying small, lightweight fighter jets.
Korean culture at the time suggested that these pilots needed to hold a position that was commensurate with the rank that they had when they were in the military. So it would be a great loss of face for a colonel in the military to be given the job of a first officer. He would go into the company as a captain.
Park became a captain even though his experience was flying solo in fighter jets, not as part of a crew on large commercial jets. By piecing together the puzzle of miscommunications, unexpected glitches, and crew dynamics, investigators believe they finally understand why Korean Air 8509 hit the ground less than 60 seconds after lifting off from the runway.
This is inexcusable. If we hit one more delay.
Korean 8509, clear takeoff runway 23.
Clear for takeoff runway 23. Korean 8509. Clear for takeoff.
Finally.
A series of delays put Flight 8509 behind schedule, testing the patience of the captain. The first officer remained quiet, trying to avoid conflict with a senior colleague.
To operate any aircraft, you need the crew to be working as a team. You don't want an autocrat in one seat and somebody who's very subservient in the other.
V1. Rotate. Positive rate confirmed.
Gear up.
Gear up.
You have to have the crew talking to each other, feeling free to comment and criticize if necessary what the other's doing.
The critical moment came as the captain turned his control column to the left. His artificial horizon didn't move.
And that would have been very confusing. He would have wondered why. And in fact, what he did was put more bank on and more bank and continued to increase the turn rate.
Bank! Bank!
The flight engineer knew that the aircraft was starting to bank at an extreme angle. But Captain Park ignored all warnings.
In fact, he had received a reprimand some months before because he had not correctly followed an instrument departure procedure. And we think that this was uppermost in his mind, that he had to follow the correct procedure to avoid getting another rap across the knuckles, I suppose.
To make matters worse, he had no visual reference and likely couldn't feel the drastic bank.
If the instrument is saying, no, you're straight and level, then that's what you believe, even though the aircraft is banked at quite a high angle.
Crews are trained to trust their instruments and not their senses. Captain Park trusted his ADI in spite of overwhelming evidence that it was wrong.
The first officer should have said to the captain, look at the warning buzzers going off. It's very difficult to understand his reactions or lack of reactions. But I think a lot of it is embedded within the culture I was at that time.
Fearing dishonor more than death itself, the first officer did not dare criticize his captain, or even attempt to correct his actions.
This crew were not operating as a crew, they were operating as one man with a couple of assistants.
The aircraft just continued to roll. 30 degrees, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 degrees of bank.
Investigators now suspect that the seeds of the deadly crash were sown hundreds of years before the 747 ever left the ground.
Sir.
For centuries, a rigid class structure based on social hierarchy defined Korean culture. Investigators have come to see how the Korean military, an honor-bound institution, has strongly influenced commercial aviation. It's now clear that strict adherence to cultural norms put the crew of Korean Air 8509 in danger from the moment they entered the cockpit.
It's very difficult to overcome entrenched cultural values.
The different stature of the two pilots was also reinforced by a disparity in military rank.
We believe that the cultural values within which these two people were raised was overwhelming in this instance.
The relationship between the two pilots was not that of equals. Just 2.5 years earlier, a Korean Air flight went down in the South Pacific, killing more than 200 people.
Korean Air had been going through quite a rough patch. One of their aircraft had been involved in an accident in Guam.
Poor crew communication and long-standing rules of hierarchy had also contributed to the crash in Guam.
Their reputation was not good. Then this accident had come along.
The US military stops using Korean Air to ferry its personnel in the Pacific region. The airline comes under strict scrutiny around the world. With the crash of Flight 8509, Korean Air's reputation is in ruins.
At a news conference, the Korean airline officials made the startling admission that military pilots, many of whom were recruited by the airline, sometimes take unnecessary risks.
Despite all the negative publicity for the struggling airline, investigators see a way to help Korean Air overcome its safety problems.
I think all accidents have a lesson or lessons to be learned that will improve aviation safety.
The AAIB recommends that all imported training materials be modified to better accommodate Korean culture. Korean Air's training programs are radically overhauled to improve pilot performance and foster a completely new culture within the cockpit.
After the accident in 1999, Korean Air, I believe, entered into a significant program to improve its safety record. That company have introduced a much more rigorous process, and they really have invested very, very heavily in the flight safety aspects that came out of this accident.
In this case, the issues of communication, the issues of how aircraft are maintained, and also the very important conclusions regarding cockpit resource management.
The statistics show that the safety record of Korean Air since these events around 1999 is such that it is now regarded as a very safe airline.
As a direct result of the crash of Flight 8509, Korean Air has been completely transformed. Since 1999, the airline has not had a single crash or fatality. It has become one of the most highly regarded airlines in the world. September 1978. A Boeing 727 is headed for the ground.
Easy, baby, easy, baby. Ma, I love you.
San Diego becomes the site of the worst aviation disaster in U.S. history.
And my hair stood up on the back of my head when I learned that this crash had occurred.
Oh, my word, the accident scene was horrendous. How am I going to put this puzzle together? It was a real big concern of mine.
Evidence leads investigators to a remarkable conclusion.
Oh, yeah. Before we turned downwind, I saw about one.
A horrendous accident may have been caused
Oh, yeah. Before we turned downwind, I saw him about 1 o'clock.
by a single misheard syllable. Pacific Southwest Airlines Flight 182 is on an early morning run down the coast of California, from Sacramento to San Diego. First Officer Bob Fox is at the controls.
Approach, PSA 182 coming on a 9.5, descending to 7,000. Airport is in sight.
A 9-year veteran with PSA, he's on track to becoming a captain. Captain Jim McFerrin has been with the airline for 17 years. Known as a born pilot, he is highly regarded by his colleagues. This is the second flight of the day for both men.
PSA 182.
Cleared visual approach, runway 27.
Thank you, cleared visual approach 27.
Among the 128 passengers, there are 30 Pacific Southwest employees. Many are heading back to the company's home base in San Diego.
PSA was an excellent airline. They had a super maintenance record, super safety record. They were recognized in the industry as, wow, these guys are good.
Pilots are cautious when arriving at San Diego. Lindbergh Field is the busiest single runway airport in North America.
San Diego Lindbergh Airport is a challenging place to fly into because of its proximity to downtown and also some of the obstructions around it.
There's a very drastic terrain drop. Pilots do it all the time, and some of them don't like to talk about it, but it's a little scary. There was always concern that, wow, someday, you know, there could be a major crash.
Several other airports nearby are abuzz with commercial, military, and private planes.
The airspace around San Diego International is quite busy because of the 600 flights a day in and out. So there are planes taking off and landing constantly.
Flight 182 will have to thread its way through all this traffic while passing over the city, preparing to land on runway 27. Martin Wayne is at the engineer's console. As they approach the airport, he contacts the company's head office.
We're out of Los Angeles. San Diego at 0905.
PSA 182. Roger.
A little late, but thank you. I just called my off report. The guy started laughing.
Make it up by reporting our next takeoff now. It's very nice.
Even though they were fun and laid back, they were still highly professional. The crews were just personable. You felt like they wanted you to be on their airplanes. It was great. Catch our smile was their motto. It was an experience. It was fun.
Flight 182's approach to Lindbergh Field is being handled by an approach controller at a facility 15 kilometers north of the airport.
The approach control facility is quite busy, and that's stressful because you're handling so many different airplanes in the same airspace.
When the controller spots a Cessna flying ahead of Flight 182, He makes sure that they can see it.
PSA 182, traffic's at 12 o'clock.
3 miles out, 1,700.
Got it. Traffic in sight.
They were issued traffic. They acknowledged sight of the traffic.
Okay, sir. Maintain visual separation. Contact Lindbergh Tower.
133.3. Have a nice day.
Okay.
Visual separation means that the pilot has another aircraft in sight and acknowledges it.
Got it.
Once the visual approach is accepted by the pilot, he's then responsible for maintaining separation from that traffic. Somewhat like two boats passing, it's the responsibility of the overtaking boat to maintain separation visually.
As it approaches the airport, Flight 182 banks left, so that it's flying parallel to the runway, ready to turn and land when given permission.
I would characterize this as wonderfully routine. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary with this flight.
With the plane now less than 8 kilometers from the runway, a controller in the airport's tower takes over to guide the flight in for landing.
Lindbergh, PSA
182, downwind.
182, roger.
Within the airport traffic area, which is that 5-mile radius, the airplanes coming into the airport to land and take off are controlled by that controller.
The tower controller is juggling several planes in addition to the PSA 727.
PSA 182, traffic 12 o'clock, 1 mile, a Cessna.
Because there's only one runway at Lindbergh, it requires some air traffic control spacing because of the difference in the speeds of the aircraft.
PSA 182, cleared to land.
182 is cleared to land.
The jets have quite a significantly faster approach speed than the Cessna, so you have to give them more spacing.
It's now 9 a.m. Many passengers on Flight 182 are planning to put in a full day's work in San Diego.
Gear down.
Minutes from landing, pilot Bob Fox spots a distant plane.
There's one underneath. I was looking at that inbound over there.
Easy, baby, easy, baby.
A professional photographer happens to spot Flight 182 in flames.
Hey, what do we got here? It's bad. We're hit, man, we're hit. Doc.
We're going down. This is PSA.
Okay. We'll call the equipment for you.
The approach controller's radar reveals that the 727 has collided with the Cessna.
Jesus Christ. It's an aluminum shower.
To have two aircraft under your control collide is the worst nightmare, I think, for any controller. I don't think anything else could be that bad.
This is it, baby. Brace yourself. Ma, I love you.
All of a sudden, just went right in. Just a burst of flames. It was just incredible.
Can't do anything about it. Come on.
And my hair stood up on the back of my head when I learned that this crash had occurred. This huge mushroom cloud of smoke and fire was seen by thousands of people.
Two planes have collided and fallen from the sky over San Diego. The city is in shock. But the full scope of the tragedy is only beginning to emerge.
Hundreds of people watched in horror as the two planes collided and crashed into a quiet San Diego residential neighborhood.
This is the biggest disaster that's ever happened in San Diego County.
One witness reported seeing falling bodies hit a car.
2 bodies were bounced out of the PSA. One hit through the windshield, killed the mother. The other one hit on the side and killed her 4-month-old baby. Police officers covered up the bodies, and that's about all they could do.
It's feared that everyone on board the two planes is dead.
The PSA plane landed at Dwight and Nile Streets. The Cessna landed about 6 blocks away in front of a house near 32nd and Polk.
"22 homes are destroyed. 7 residents are killed. 9 more are injured. The city feels overwhelmed.
We heard on the news, so we came down here to see what we could do to help. We've been walking through here, carrying water, and it's just such a bad scene. It's really horrible.
Greg Clark is a San Diego police officer who rushes to the scene to help search for survivors.
For me, it looked like a large bomb had gone off. Everything that was in the path of the aircraft just completely destroyed. There were passenger seats stuck in the side of houses, and pieces of fuselage just everywhere. I found nobody that was in one piece.
2 hours after the crash, NTSB investigator Wally Funk arrives from Los Angeles.
Since I was the lead investigator for that particular day, I got the call from the FAA duty officer, and he informed me that there had been a mid-air collision in San Diego. Oh my word, the accident scene was horrendous. First, the San Diego Police Department escorted me in and introduced me to the fire marshal, because they have control of the entire wreckage.
Any survivors yet?
That was just chilling, that you suddenly realize there are no survivors.
The medical personnel were frustrated because everybody came to the realization that there was nothing that they could do.
144 people are dead, including the 7 on the ground. It's the biggest airline disaster in American history.
It was entirely something that I had not expected. There was so many bits and parts and pieces around not only the aircraft, but the homes. I just started by photographing and writing notes. A real big concern of mine was, how am I going to put this puzzle together?
Funk needs to confirm that the wreckage of a small plane found 6 blocks away is in fact what collided with the 727.
There's no doubt about it. We had paint transfers. We had pieces and parts from the 2 different aircraft. Yes, this was an absolute mid-air collision. There's no doubt about it.
But there's a much larger question looming. How could such an accident happen?
We had to visualize from a very mangled mess of metal where the 2 came together. I really felt compelled to bring the Cessna wreckage over to the main wreckage.
Put that down right there, please.
So we could kind of understand really what had happened.
Eventually, the wreckage of the 2 planes is sent to a hangar for reconstruction.
It's just a big puzzle. You have to try one piece at a time, putting it together.
Funk records as many witness interviews as possible, while memories are still fresh.
But I find in all my investigations that children up to 17, 18 years old are my best witnesses, because a youngster will give me a really good interpretation of what they saw, not what they thought they heard or what they thought they saw.
There were quite a few people that described what they saw had fallen out of the sky.
Can you tell me exactly what you saw when you looked up?
But all the interviews are disappointing.
So you didn't see the actual collision?
We have nobody that really saw the whole thing happen. We only saw it after the bang.
The closest thing to a sighting of the collision is a television crew's footage of the Cessna plummeting to the ground. The NTSB sends additional staff from Washington, including senior investigator Philip Hogue.
Done great work here. Let's get right down to it, all right? I know that you've done a heck of a lot of research and you've been mainly concentrating on the larger aircraft.
But it was great to see the guys when they finally got there. The technical support was wonderful. We kind of divvy up the duties.
So I will tackle the Cessna.
Needing to know more about the smaller plane, they review its records for the day. The Cessna belonged to a flight training school. A student pilot was having a lesson.
We had a flight instructor sitting on the right side, and we had a student pilot learning to get his instrument rating.
Investigators learned that the student pilot approached runway 9 twice, practicing landing using only his instruments.
Instrument pilots need more the practice of approaching the runways as opposed to the landings.
Local media jumped to a conclusion.
There were a lot of people who thought that the crash had to be the fault of that Cessna because it had a student pilot.
There can be a built-in bias in traveling public's mind and the media's mind that airliners should have priority in and out of airports. And this is not the way that it works. It's a first-come, first-served system.
However, with a jetliner on an assigned glide path coming into a major airport, people want to know how come that little airplane was up there in the way.
Hopefully, the black boxes salvaged from the crash site will help answer this question.
One was up front, which was the voice recorder, and one was in the aft stairwell, which was the instrument recorder. They were flown back to Washington, D.C., figuring out what was said in the cockpit and what the instrument said. Takes a lot of time.
In the meantime, investigators interview the first of the two controllers who were guiding the planes.
Can you show us the two flight paths?
The approach controller remembers the planned routes of the two planes, but he can't be sure what routes they actually flew, because approach radar is not recorded.
So the 727 was flying east to do a turnaround and land on runway 27. And the Cessna was flying northeast, but it was miles ahead of the 727, probably headed home after doing touch and goes on runway 9.
They should have missed each other by over a mile.
Since I had been into Lindbergh several times as a pilot, it occurred to me, were they on the right headings, altitudes?
Learning the exact flight paths will require complex calculations that include data from an air traffic station in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, a transcript of the controller's conversation with both planes reveals the pilots were aware of each other's positions.
So, the PSA crew reported seeing the Cessna when they were still 3 miles apart. The planes would have been somewhere around here and here.
Got it. Traffic in sight.
The Cessna pilot was also made aware of the 727 behind them.
Traffic at 6 o'clock. 2 miles eastbound, a PSA jet inbound to Lindbergh out of 3,200 has you in sight.
Investigators want to know, if the pilots of both planes knew of each other, why did their aircraft collide? New radar equipment installed just 1 month earlier was designed to prevent exactly this type of incident.
The collision alert system was instituted to prevent collisions, to alert controllers the fact that there was an imminent collision between two aircraft.
Didn't you get any warning?
We did. We ignored it.
Explain.
Well, when the alert sounded, I mentioned it to my supervisor. It's alarm again. I talked to both planes. PSA 182 has confirmed a visual sighting of the Cessna. We're not expected to contact the pilots if they're flying by visual rules. Not to mention we get about 13 alarms a day, so.
He went to his advisor and told him what he had, but since they had had so many false ones, they really just kind of disregarded it.
The controllers decide not to act on the alert, but they still contact the Cessna and repeat an earlier message.
Traffic in your vicinity. PSA jet has you in sight. He's descending for Lindbergh.
You could almost call it a courtesy call by the approach controller to the Cessna.
But at that exact moment,
get over here.
The planes collide.
I feel they should have watched these two aircraft a little closer. I think they were rather cavalier about it.
Investigators interview the Lindbergh Tower controller, trying to understand why he also failed to warn both planes about their impending collision. They discover that to monitor traffic, he relied on a less sophisticated form of radar.
The tower controller did not have the collision alert system at the time.
When the controller saw the planes within 1.5 kilometers of each other, he made contact, warning the 727.
PSA 182. Traffic, 12 o'clock, 1 mile. Assessment.
I think he's passing off to our right.
Yeah.
If the pilot says he's passing off to our right, this implies that he's still maintaining visual separation. It was his responsibility, and you would not worry about it.
After talking to both controllers, investigators still have no answer to the key question in the mid-air collision. Who crashed into whom?
Now, let's have the next acetate, please, and see where that takes us.
When they finally calculate the two planes' actual radar tracks, the answer becomes clear.
This is where the 727 has rear-ended the Cessna.
The Cessna never passed off to the right. He was always in front of PSA.
The 91-ton aircraft, flying at almost 300 kilometers per hour, simply tore apart the much slower and lighter Cessna.
We have plotted down here, this is the third position.
The radar track reveals another important detail. Just before the impact, the Cessna turned right into the 727's path.
Why the change in heading?
The trajectories of the two airplanes are such that had the Cessna not drifted, the airplanes would not have collided.
Close examination of the Cessna's training flight log reveals one possible reason for the change in direction.
He was wearing a training hood.
The Cessna pilot wore a training hood. It's a device worn during instrument flight training.
A pilot undergoing training for an instrument rating must learn to fly with exclusive reference to the instruments. So on good weather days, there has to be some means to block the natural horizon, the outside.
And it was a black hood that came out about this far from his face so that he couldn't see outside.
Funk wonders if the hood could have caused him to go off course at the worst possible time. The Cessna was told to stay on a 70-degree heading.
711 Golf, San Diego departure.
Fly heading 070.
Pilots are taught to scan their instruments to maintain their heading.
On occasion, you'll see headings that will drift because the learning pilot doesn't have the heading in that scan fast enough.
But even if the hood did play a role in causing the Cessna to drift,
but it does not explain why the PSA crew couldn't see the Cessna.
Got it.
Traffic in sight.
how did the veteran crew of a 727 lose sight of a plane flying directly in front of it? Investigators now realize they may never find out why the pilot of a Cessna changed its heading, putting it on the same flight path as a 727.
Why the Cessna pilot did not stay on his assigned heading, I can't answer that question.
But it's important to know that that drift of that heading wasn't so severe that the air traffic controller called him and said, "What's your heading?" So clearly they did turn according to the radar, but the significance of it is a bit more questionable.
What's not in question is that it was the responsibility of the 727's crew to avoid the Cessna.
The PSA crew, when they acknowledged they had the Cessna in sight, at that moment became responsible for keeping the airplane separate.
In Washington, investigators review the PSA crew's last moments on the recovered cockpit voice recording.
All right, hit it.
Are we clear of that Cessna?
Supposed to be.
I guess. I hope. Oh, yeah.
Hold on. Go back.
Philip Hogue focuses in on the conversation recorded 35 seconds before the collision.
Are we clear of that Cessna?
Supposed to be.
I guess. I hope. Oh, yeah. Before we turned downwind, I saw him about 1 o'clock. Probably behind us now.
The PSA crew not only doesn't see the Cessna, they assume they have already passed it.
It was right in front of them the whole time.
The 727, when it's flying in level flight, is a slightly nose-up condition. So that the pilots, as they look out, they're looking over the nose of the airplane.
Was the nose of the aircraft high and they didn't see the Cessna, they may not have realized the Cessna was as close as it was.
The NTSB conducts a study to determine how long the PSA crew could see the Cessna through their windscreen.
Well, welcome aboard. Now, use the reference points to adjust your seat.
They start by adjusting the pilot's seats for optimal viewing, using a device called the Design Eye Reference Point.
The manufacturers designed a very simple but very effective system where you line up little balls in the center post of the windscreen that puts your eye in the same position every time.
Now, if you would, please take a measurement from my eye line to the white ball in the middle. Okay, now from the eyeball to the floor, please.
Once the pilot's viewing positions have been determined, the photographer uses a special camera to take panoramic images of each pilot's view.
Okay, let's have a look at what the pilots can see. Would you put up the view?
He starts with the captain's view. Radar tracks provide the Cessna's heading, pitch, and bank angle. They plot this data on top of the photographs in 10-second intervals.
Let's see what the co-pilot can see, please.
What they find is surprising. A longer than expected time period in which the PSA crew could see the Cessna.
170 seconds of clear view.
The pilots could have seen the Cessna in plain view.
How can you miss a plane that is staring you in the face? Yeah, it's something falling. She doesn't say what, but okay. All right, I'll take that, Sue Pritchard.
Investigators wonder if witness reports can shed some light on the mystery. They discover that there may have been something in the air that misled the pilots.
We had collected 220 witness reports, but 16 of those witness reports revealed that they thought they saw other aircraft in the area.
Air traffic controllers don't remember a third plane flying nearby. But many small planes don't carry a transponder, the device needed to identify them.
Had they not had a transponder, the third airplane may not have been visible to the radar in the San Diego approach facility.
Investigators study the cockpit recordings more closely, searching for clues about a third plane.
Oh, yeah. Before we turned downwind, I saw him about 1 o'clock. Probably behind us now.
35 seconds before the crash, the crew assumed the Cessna was safely out of the way. But the captain's 1 o'clock reference seems odd. The flight paths of the two planes show that the Cessna was never in that position.
The Cessna was at their 11 o'clock. So, what plane were they looking at?
The fact that it was at 1 o'clock instead of 11 o'clock indicates that there's a possibility that he saw another aircraft. It may have been quite some distance away, but he saw another aircraft.
Then another clue about a possible third plane.
There's one underneath. I was looking at that inbound over there.
The plane he spots is flying inbound. That means it's flying in the opposite direction of the Cessna that was hit.
It does open and add further credibility to the possibility that they saw a different airplane.
But what plane exactly may never be known, even after factoring in the 16 reported sightings of other aircraft.
The team concluded that the 16 witnesses could not really put an aircraft in that particular area at that particular time.
Investigators are at an impasse. Their visibility study tells them that the Cessna was technically visible for 170 seconds, nearly 3 full minutes. So why did the crew of the 727 lose sight of it? They go back to the cockpit recording.
3 miles just north of the field, northeastbound. Cessna 172 climbing VFR
Okay, stop
at
tape.
1,400.
135 seconds to impact. This is when the controller first mentioned Cessna. Okay, roll tape again.
PSA 182.
2 minutes before the collision, the crew hears the Cessna's position being described, but they haven't spotted it yet.
The silhouette of the Cessna would have been difficult as they were approximately the same altitude. They're going in the same direction, so that one of the things that the human eye picks up is movement. And for a good part of the time, this is not moving in the windscreen.
San Diego Ops, we're number 2, because we try harder.
The Cessna has now been visible for nearly 80 seconds out of their window, but the crew has failed to see it.
90 seconds to impact. They get another warning.
And after we read and saw what CBR said, I feel that they were distracted in their conversation.
Roll tape.
PSA 182, traffic's at 12 o'clock, 3 miles out, 1,700.
Got it. Traffic in sight.
Stop tape.
85 seconds before impact, the 727's pilots spot the Cessna flying ahead of them. The crew is then instructed to use visual flight rules and contact the Lindbergh Tower.
Okay, sir. Maintain visual separation, contact Lindbergh Tower 133.3. Have a nice day.
Okay.
They saw it 1 second, and then they didn't see it another second. Well, was the conversation such that they looked away and missed it?
The crew must now keep the Cessna in view while performing other tasks. The captain contacts the tower controller and prepares for landing.
Lindbergh, PSA 182, downwind.
The wings need to be configured with the proper slats and flap settings. The landing gear must be lowered. Systems have to be adjusted. All of these things are going on. So it's a busy place for 3 people in a 727.
At this critical moment, no one is keeping an eye on the Cessna.
PSA 182, traffic 12 o'clock, 1 mile, Cessna.
Is that the one we're looking at?
Yeah, but I don't see him now.
The Cessna should be right here in front of them.
The Cessna was visible just at about the windshield level of PSA. And it's really incredible that somehow they lost sight of it.
Okay, can you show me how you normally adjust your seat, please?
But when investigators learn more about how PSA pilots adjust their seats, they begin to understand how the crew may have lost sight of the Cessna.
That's it? You don't use your reference points?
It's not a requirement to utilize the manufacturer's designed iReference position.
Investigators discover that many pilots adjust their seats to their own personal settings.
Pilots come in all sizes and shapes. They learn quickly to adjust the seats to the position that's comfortable.
Some pilots want to sit lower so they can see their instruments better.
From this new seat position, the Cessna's location on the windshield is recalculated. The results show an important difference between the two seat settings. With the new setting, the crew would have had the Cessna in view for only 5 to 10 seconds, not a few minutes.
5 seconds, that's all.
The position of the Cessna was down below the nose or the reference that the pilots could see. If they had moved their heads up, the Cessna was still visible, but otherwise it was below the windscreens.
Okay, let's play Find the Cessna.
But even assuming that the crew did lean forward, investigators now realize they would face other problems in spotting the Cessna.
It's almost camouflaged.
They become harder to see, and the terrain makes it even more so because you have white roofs, you have dark roofs, you have roads, you have lakes, you have trees, so the background changes and the aircraft will move across this background.
Is that the one we're looking at?
Yeah. But I don't see him now.
The Cessna is now flying too close to the 727 to be viewed without leaning forward, and it's against a backdrop that makes it hard to recognize.
PSA 182. Cleared to land.
182 is cleared to land.
A collision is now imminent, and the 6 men involved in preventing it are oblivious. The Cessna pilot can't see out of his window. His trainer has failed to notice the plane is off course. The 727's crew have the Cessna in a blind spot, but both controllers assume the crew can see the Cessna and will avoid it. There's only one thing that can stop this accident from happening, and 144 lives depend on it.
The PSA captain should have made the suggestion to the tower, I don't see him anymore.
Captain McFerrin will talk to the tower about the Cessna, but a misunderstanding over a single word will prove deadly. The two planes are 70 seconds from colliding over San Diego.
PSA 182. Traffic 12 o'clock, 1 mile. A Cessna.
Flaps 5.
Is that the one we're looking for?
Yeah, but I don't see him now.
The fate of Flight 182 now depends on the captain clearly communicating this to the tower.
Okay, we had him there a minute ago.
But the captain is not clear.
22, roger.
And the controller assumes the Cessna is still in sight.
When the PSA crew lost visual contact, they're responsible to tell the air traffic controller, I no longer see the Cessna.
Still uncertain about the Cessna's location, once again the captain tries to explain his situation to the tower.
I think he's passed off to our right.
The comment that the captain makes indicates that they're not sure, that they don't have him in sight at that moment.
The controller could force the PSA flight or the Cessna to change course, but he does nothing.
It's very difficult to determine what that exchange between the air traffic controller and PSA meant to each of the pilots. The captain made the comment,
I think he's passed off to our right,
indicating that he wasn't 100% sure. The air traffic controller heard it as a declarative statement and answered,
yep.
What that meant to the PSA crew, I'm not sure we'll ever know.
He was right over here a minute ago.
Yeah.
But they were satisfied with the situation enough that they continued the approach, and the air traffic controller was satisfied with the situation enough that he did not make any further comments about it.
Okay, we had him there.
Investigators want to know why the controller took no action. They compare two separate recordings of the conversation between the captain and the controller.
Okay, Chris, let's hear the cockpit first.
I think he's passed off to our right.
Passed. I thought I heard passing before. Double check that, please.
I think he's passed off to our right.
You're still saying pass. Let's compare it with the tower, because I think I heard passing.
They make a startling discovery.
He's passing off to our right.
Passing. I was right. It does sound like passing.
Due to radio static, The controller heard the word passing, not passed. The difference may have sealed the fate of Flight 182.
Passing? Big difference.
The recordings reveal that while the pilot of PSA 182 said one thing, the Lindbergh Tower controller heard something else.
I think he's passing off to our right.
Yeah.
Now investigators understand why the controller took no action. If he had heard the words, "He's passed off to our right," he would have seen from his radar that the pilot was mistaken and that the 727 had not actually passed the Cessna.
The air traffic controller heard it as he's passing off to our right. That indicated that they still had visual contact with him.
He would believe that the pilot was being able to maintain the separation, was his responsibility, and you would not worry about it.
In the spring of 1979, investigators finally conclude who is at fault.
The determination of the board's report is very clear that the crew obviously did not see the aircraft Cessna in time to divert it away from a catastrophic accident.
The PSA crew, when they lost visual contact, is responsible to tell the air traffic controller, "I no longer see the Cessna," and that they did not do.
The Cessna pilot is also mentioned as a factor for changing course without notifying the tower. Both controllers are criticized for not following protocol and giving the 727's crew the specific heading of the Cessna.
Thinking back to that day, there's just a tremendous sadness that comes to mind. You know that accidents happen, but you think this was an accident that could have been prevented, but it wasn't.
Recommendations in the report focus on improving the air traffic control system at Lindbergh Field.
They changed procedures after this. They put in a terminal control area, and there was a great deal of restriction on what kind of traffic could go through and at what altitudes. So a great many different restrictions to make it a safer operation were put into place at Lindbergh after this accident.
We're out of Los Angeles. San Diego at 0905.
PSA 182. Roger.
I just called my off report. The guy started laughing.
Make it up by reporting our next takeoff now.
There's another legacy of PSA 182. New rules governing all conversations in the cockpit when flying below 10,000 feet.
Today's regulation requires that you concentrate your conversation exclusively on the operation of the airplane. At the time of the PSA 182 accident, that regulation was not in effect.
PSA 182 also helped push the FAA in the search for new technology. 3 years after the accident in 1981, a safety device called TCAS, or Traffic Collision Avoidance System, was put into development. Now installed in all passenger aircraft, the system warns pilots when another plane comes too close.
TCAS was a God bless. We now can put it on our transponders and we can see or hear or what's going on or be told what's going on with aircraft around us. We have come in big leaps to make aviation safer for people to fly and feel comfortable that their airplane is going to get where they want to go.